Hey everybody, welcome to the Resistance broadcast. I'm John. Thanks for joining us on this Monday, the first day of spring 2023. And as the flowers begin to bloom, we are hoping for Star Wars news to arrive at Star Wars Celebration. And we're going to talk a little bit about the future of Star Wars movies on this episode and do a full Resistance report. It's actually a pretty classic edition of the Resistance broadcast. And with me, as always, is James and Lacey. Guys, how's it going? We are so close to going to Star Wars Celebration. And on that note, we do have some news to reveal about a panel that we're going to be doing at Celebration. So I know you guys are excited. So I'm not going to do the news. I'm not going to do the big reveal. I'm going to let one of you guys let everyone know what's going on, unless you want me to do it. But how are you doing?
Let Lacey, you do it.
Okay. So we finally found out our panel time, which is super exciting. So our panel will be taking place on Sunday, April 9th on the HoloNet news stage at 11 a.m. from 11 to 12 p.m. 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. The switchover. That is when our panel is.
London time.
in room 17 of the HoloNet news stage. We found out also that there's two stages that are HoloNet news stages. So make sure you go to room 17. That's where we're going to be at. We have tons of giveaways, lots of fun stuff like that. And our main discussion is going to be Gaga for Grogu, the creatures we love from Star Wars, and the droids too.
Yeah. And
so that's exciting.
A lot of other topics too. We're going to do some crowd participation in Will of the Force, or if you just want to sit there and chill, that's cool too. We are going to do our best to record the panel. No guarantees on streaming. Who knows with the internet and what's going on there, but we're going to do our best to try to capture it so that all of you who are faithful TRB listeners and watchers will have a chance at some point to check that out. But also, being that we're doing it on Sunday, there's probably going to be some aspects of the show, that we're going to talk about the reveals, hopefully, that happened that weekend as well. So it's going to be a loaded hour, as we always do. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you are going to Celebration, please come hang out with TRB, check it out. Right, James? Pumped? Huh? Pumped?
Yeah. It's funny that the Easter thing is quite interesting because I know you're going to get up there, John. You're going to go, "We're back, baby!" And I don't want to take anything away from anybody else that came famously back on that day.
I see what you did there. Yes.
So it's a little bit, but it's going to be a good time, and I think we have a good.
Was it Luke Skywalker?
Excited to see it was Luke Skywalker. He came back Easter Sunday after Good Friday, where he destroyed the Emperor.
I thought it was Palpatine, but
both.
What are we gonna do?
Somehow.
Yeah. Well, somehow, but
on the third day, Palpatine rose again. On the third trilogy.
I'm totally excited about the panel. I'm excited about Celebration. It's coming up, and it's one of those things we talk about it every time we've gone. It's like, oh man, I can't wait for that to happen in 3 months. And oh my God, it's like 3 weeks.
When you're at the point where you're talking about like dates for things, and you're like, well, I have to do it this week because the following week I'm in London. Like that's bananas. That's when you know it's getting real. When you're starting to make lists of like, what are the things I need? And then you realize Delta switched your flight last minute, so you had to change that. Those kinds of things.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
I should
it was
look
a whole
at that.
thing.
I haven't looked too deep. I keep getting alerts that
so
my
also
changed, but I'm like, let it happen.
Didn't give this quick tip last week. If Delta is telling you that they changed your time, double check it because they might change you to a flight that interrupts your next flight that then you have to completely change because they've been combining flights. So,
jeez,
don't worry.
Did
It's
you guys
around
ever
the same
hear
time.
that John Mulaney stand up where he's like a horrible airline, which I'm not going to name, so I'll make up a fake name, Delta.
It's so true.
James, why don't you just go to a bar near the airport and pick up some guy and his dog and have them fly you for $17,000?
That's an Indiana Jones joke for those at home that are.
That is a Star Wars A New Hope reference.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Indiana Jones.
Gotcha.
No.
I thought you were talking about the hangar bar.
It's a fast ship.
Oh,
I'm pulling it all together now, John. I'm like a bar with a guy and his
Yeah.
dog. It's
Listen,
all coming together now.
Here's the deal, guys. Bob Iger confirmed that The Acolyte is coming out in 2024. Thoughts?
I mean, that's not surprising to me. that seemed pretty on par, right? Although, didn't they mention it in their press release at the beginning of this year? Wasn't it in there?
Not that I saw. I
Oh,
think
wait,
there was.
no. Skeleton Crew was included in this year.
Right.
That's
yeah.
what it was. They also
So-
canceled Willow, so I'm kind of mad at Bob Iger right now.
Yeah.
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 But that means, I mean, unless they're like completely not going to work with John Kasdan again, he's available. That's all I'm saying. All right, James, we got some stories to cook through, including one we didn't get an opportunity to touch on. So let's fire up the Resistance Report.
All right. Resistance report. Here we go.
It's the Resistance.
Last week, we decided to take a little bit of time, step away from Star Wars, and kind of cover the celebration stuff because we wanted to do a tips and tricks episode for everybody that does plan on going or is just interested in the concept of going to big festivals and events and things like that. But during that time frame, there was a report that came out that was like, Feige's out, Jenkins is out, like all this crazy stuff. Taika still happening, but now he wants to star in his own movie. And it was from Variety. It was a crazy thing where it sort of just broke down everything that we know about Star Wars right now, including Rian Johnson, including Damon Lindelof and everything. And it was quite an interesting report. But like I said, that I feel the biggest takeaway from that was Patty Jenkins' movie officially sort of moving aside, even though we knew that it's more official now. And then the surprising Kevin Feige's movie that he was planning on producing is just not happening at all. And that was surprising because you would think Kevin Feige, big name, capable of doing so many movies in Marvels. What's one more? He hired the guy, Michael Waldron's writing the story. It seemed
Poor
like
Michael
it was,
Waldron.
yeah, it was
Oh,
coming together.
I hear you, but he's fine.
Yeah,
I know
Marvel's
he's
like,
fine,
money,
but he still
money.
like was excitedly talking about how he was writing a Star Wars movie.
I know.
Yeah,
And then
he's
Kathleen
gonna
was like, "Who?"
And not to interrupt your like intro
we're good.
James, but I don't want to forget this. Let's not forget like Kathleen Kennedy, and I guess Lacey, you were sort of alluding to that, was pretending that was a rumor.
Yeah, who? That was that was the Solo interview that got buried right before Celebration last year.
So this whole Kevin Feige thing may have been like sort of squashed longer ago because she was like not trying to like say that was a thing.
It's been messy.
That's a good point.
And like, Marie Kondo says, I just love mess. I do not love mess. This has not been enjoyable to watch happen.
So no, it's fine. Yeah. The more about Bob Iger as he was revealing some of this stuff too. It came the Ahsoka was information, or Ahsoka was supposed to debut in the summer. That's what we're alluding to now, which is really where I'm at the end of the story. But John, I want to pick up with you where you were saying about the thing that you were saying. What were you saying?
Well, I say a lot of things.
Those
one
things.
Of those things is
he says that everything's scrapped, and so far he's almost right, and I hate it.
Oh well, that's on brand. That's what we do here.
I'm saying I hate that you're right in the sense that all these movies are being scrapped. Not that I hate that you're right in the sense that you're my friend, and I hate that you're right.
Yeah. We're all we're tight. We're tight here. We're tight. So here's the deal. Feige, all this stuff that was reported or not officially announced, whatever it was, pre this summer writers room with Lindelof thing, I want to be scrapped because all that stuff seemed to be part of that. We're not sure what we're doing, so we're just going to throw unknown movies at these big names and see what works. And I think they finally figured out a real plan, and it starts with this Lindelof thing and then goes forward. So the only thing that still bothers me is this Taika thing and I like Taika Waititi, but I think he might be, and I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but whatever. I think he might be this sort of product of everybody likes him so much that he's like the kid who gets away with everything. And now like, he's like reportedly saying, who knows if this is true, but we're going by what the trades are saying. He may come out and say, I never said that, but as of we know now, he wants to star in this thing now, or he wants to be in it. And I didn't see the last Thor movie because I heard it was bad, and a lot of people really soured on it, and I didn't necessarily love the one before that. I thought it was all right that he did.
You didn't like Ragnarok?
I was all right. I thought it was fine.
Oh, I loved
fun.
Ragnarok. But I haven't seen same thing. I haven't seen the second one because people didn't like it.
I don't know. I kind of want that to get scrapped too, because I feel like that's part of the like, does this still fit? And it seems like he maybe has to rework this to fit the new plan. And then you look at the schedule and you got 2025, which we'll get to in a minute, but that seems like that's going to be Lindelof. And then you have 2027, which I think is going to be Sean Levy, who went out of his way to say he's locked in. So then where is Taika's movie? Are they going to start doing a movie a year again? I don't know if they're doing that. So I we'll see what happens with the Taika thing. But I actually think this is it looks bad, and fans who love Star Wars have to deal with this because of the hate machine that's out there. Like, oh, look, more canceled Star Wars. Even Kevin Feige can't do a Star Wars, and you got to deal with that. But at the end of the day, I think this is good because it just seemed like, again, one of those things where they're like, yeah, Kevin, come do a Star Wars. We'll figure that out later. Patty Jenkins, let's do this Rogue Squadron thing. Yeah. And then Taika, you'll do a movie, and we'll do all these one-offs and stuff. And it just seemed like this, like, let's just tell Disney we're working on stuff so that we're filling this production quota and these check-ins so that they have something to tell the shareholders. And it just seems like it was messy. And it seems like it was going to be that same thing again, where they start production and something happens or whatever. And, you could just see the writing on the wall. Whereas now it's like, all right, wipe the board, that whole whiteboard, wipe it off. Let's get these people in a room, get Filoni in here. He's a creative executive now. Let's think about this. Let's put a plan together. And then all the other stories we're going to talk about here in the Resistance Report sort of lend credence to this and where we're going forward. So I'm excited, even though it's like a bummer in some respects, especially the people. I know so many people really want to see Patty Jenkins do that movie and stuff, but I think this is going to be a good thing for Star Wars. So I'm thinking positively about it. And then like last bit, my take on the Ahsoka thing, saying in late summer, I think those are the exact words they said about Andor last year, which was supposed to be end of August and then got bumped a month. So I'm thinking they liked where that sat. So I'm thinking September for Ahsoka.
I'm for this story, I'm just kind of interested because going back to the whole Kevin Feige doing a Star Wars movie, the source of that story originally was nothing from Lucasfilm or Disney. It was Hollywood Reporter.
Right. Yeah.
That's where we got the news. And I'm also not saying that it isn't true or wasn't happening because of the Michael Waldron stuff. He's already come out. He said it, we know it was in development, but some of this stuff is really interesting where we're like, that's happening and it got canceled. It's like, sometimes we don't give Lucasfilm enough credit for like what has been announced and what has happened. Does that kind of make sense? There is some stuff. Well, because there is some stuff, like there's the Rian Johnson stuff that was announced by Lucasfilm and has not happened yet, but they've not ever come out and said it isn't happening. And then anything else, all these other stories that we've heard have all been trade reports, like this person's developing a Star Wars movie. This person's developing a Star Wars movie. To that credit, though, Patty Jenkins was announced. Looks like it's getting canceled. Right. So that is an example of that.
Right.
Are there any ones? Was Benioff and Weiss ever, or not Benioff and Weiss? No, wait, which one was it? Sorry. Yeah.
Well, the Game
of
Thrones
Thrones was announced and then canceled.
That was Star Wars.com.
Was it actually announced? It was Star Wars.
Star Wars.com. Yes. Early 2018.
So
they were supposed to do a series of films.
Yes. Okay. So that one is another one that goes into this boat. But this Kevin Feige one is not, which is kind of interesting. The Taika Waititi one, still,
they all go on the boat. You can't. I hear what you're saying, but like JD Dillard wasn't officially announced either, and he came out and said like, yeah, I was supposed to, and it just didn't work out. So like, I think a lot of these reports are true, and we could say like, well, it wasn't officially announced, but it's still something that was in production and they were
Rebel
working
Moon.
on,
Rebel
or not
Moon
in production, but in pre-production.
That was pitched a while ago and just didn't happen. He went to Zack Snyder went to Netflix with it. Like,
Yeah,
that's another
I know.
project.
But I'm just saying, like those things to me, I'm not really sure that you can hold that against like a CEO or something or a president to say that.
I think you can. They've had a very unsuccessful announcement launch process. And I'm talking outside of obviously the Skywalker saga series, and I'm talking just about stuff that you hear that's happening. Josh Trank, Boba Fett, all the stuff that should have been happening that didn't happen. So if you're looking at the record of things that have happened from announcing and things that have been announced and or hinted at that haven't happened, it's overwhelmingly to the other side. And look,
yeah, I feel like I just need a chart or something like that. Because I understand what everybody's saying, and 90% of the time I am on that page. But when the examples are things like Josh Trank, well, Josh Trank was supposed to develop something, it fell apart, but at the end of the day, it was never announced. So if you're only following Lucasfilm's,
he was going to be announced at Celebration. I made the image,
but he wasn't. That's my point. He was,
but it was in development, though. That proves that it was.
That's fine that it's in development. Be at the show.
Yes, but James, we're talking about movies from the point of inception to development to happen.
Yeah, I feel like you're like standing on this semantic of, well, it wasn't on, Dan at StarWars.com didn't write an article about it, so Kathleen Kennedy can't be held to the flame on it. It's like,
I mean, they just canceled the Nancy Meyer movie that they were making on Netflix. It still was happening. It just got canceled. So I think that when you're getting to the point of like, was it in development, was it canceled? That still counts. It's still in the process.
Yeah, I guess it's just it feels a little bit different when a studio says we are making blank movie and then it gets canceled.
But James, do you think? Don't you think that if there was one of those projects that got canceled and like Lucasfilm really wasn't developing it or something, somebody, whether it's PR or somebody big at Lucasfilm or even a Pablo Hidalgo or somebody like snarkily saying like, well, that never existed anyway. Like all this stuff is real. Just because they didn't put out a official press release on it doesn't mean anything. They were still developing it and it failed, or it didn't work out, or the creators backed out, like Benioff and Weiss. They took their ball and left. They're like, we don't like how this is going. Netflix is backing up the Brink truck and dumping it on our lawn. We're going to Netflix, which we still haven't seen their stuff either. To be fair,
we haven't. We have not.
But I totally get what you're saying. That, hey, we never announced this. You just found out because of this reporter, but we did find out. So it's still tangible. It still exists.
Yeah.
Because it's also coming from multiple sources too. It's not one person that's randomly saying this.
And sometimes it's the person
these
themselves.
Things aren't in development. I'm saying that I feel that to some degree you have to draw a line between when things are in development talks. We're moving, but that might be a possibility. We're talking to these people and stuff. But then like there's a difference between somebody says we're coming out and we are doing Willow 2. It's happening. Season 2.
Yes,
but
they didn't say that you can't hold it against the CEO. They haven't had a Star Wars movie in 6 years. You can absolutely say, hey, what's going on?
But they never said that they were going to put out a Star Wars movie. They said we're taking a break.
They said that they were putting out Rian Johnson's movies after the saga ended. A trilogy of films.
I mean, look, I don't want to get into the semantics of that, but I don't know if they ever announced when Rian Johnson stuff was coming out. It was just presumed that it would happen next after this slate.
All right.
Well, I'm not making Lacey happy, but I don't know.
It's not even that. I think we're getting into like the nitty gritty of like, oh, they didn't specifically say this word, but like every trade is covering it. Every person's talking about it. Other people have mentioned it. Like they've mentioned it at Star Wars
James is looking for a free photo op with Kathleen Kennedy at Celebration.
Yeah.
No, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. Look, you guys know me. I'm the person that has stood to the Rian Johnson thing because they haven't come out and officially said it's canceled. So it's still happening until they say it's canceled. It doesn't matter what all the background stuff and everybody's saying, yeah, that's not happening. I'm like, it's not happening until the company says it's not happening. It is happening because they said it is happening. I see things that way.
Isn't that different from these things, which they never said was happening, that are now not happening?
Speaking of happening, is Lindelof.
The Kevin Feige movie was never happening because it was never announced from Lucasfilm that it was happening. Does that make sense? I know it was happening. It was being developed, but it wasn't announced. Okay.
You say that?
Everybody gets my point.
But Michael Waldron came out numerous times in interviews saying he was writing a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, Lacey,
So
what did
either
I just
he's
say?
a liar.
I
or it
know that it was being developed.
I'm trying to
It
figure
was
out what
never
your angle
officially
is.
I
announced.
don't
That's what I wanna know.
understand what the angle is.
Something that was never officially announced is canceled. That's my point.
It's still
Stuff
canceled
that's
though.
never canceled happens all the time in all other movie studios. It's not just
Yeah.
Lucasfilm. It still means it was canceled. Passengers with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence went through like I think 15 years of development, went through multiple casts with Keanu Reeves at one point, all these things, Reese Witherspoon. It doesn't
know, but
mean that
there's
it got canceled.
Yeah.
It was going to be
But
made.
isn't there a
and
big
got
difference
canceled.
between somebody saying like, I'm thinking about doing a Rebels rewatch for Patreon or something, and then also saying, guess what, guys? I'll be doing a Rebels rewatch. Expect it every Saturday.
It's
from
not
now
thinking
on.
though
Yeah.
if it's in development. It's not a thinking. This isn't someone sitting at lunch having a sandwich saying, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to make a movie about X-wing pilots." Like she made an announcement video. Like
Mhm.
all these things were spoken about.
I think we're just drawing the line differently. I understand development. I'm just saying I draw the line at officially announced.
Which
You can
thing are you saying
develop all
hasn't
you
been
want
officially
if
announced?
you've never officially announced, but you have a fully fledged movie.
Okay, so are you saying the Kevin Feige thing wasn't officially announced? That's what you're
It
saying.
wasn't officially announced. Yeah. And now that
But
it's
Taika
canceled,
was.
it's like, yeah, and he's not
Yep.
canceled. It's not canceled. That's my point.
Okay. All right.
All I'm
Okay.
saying is I'd
You're
like to look
standing
at
on
some of these things
semantics,
as like
and it
these
doesn't change
things
anything.
that we think of as full-fledged, they are happening. This is happening is not always happening because it's just a trade rumor, or trade post, trade exclusive.
Even
So-
Kevin Feige even acknowledged the movie when they asked him, "Are you taking over Lucasfilm?" He's like, "No, I'm just doing a movie."
Yeah, he did an interview.
I'm not saying that it wasn't in development.
James, I don't think I know what you're saying. At this point.
know. All right. Okay, I think everybody else does except for you two.
I don't think so. I think it's semantics, and I think it doesn't matter.
Because you just said if they don't announce it, it's not happening. But we just said Kevin Feige said in an interview that was happening, and you're like, I know it's in development, and we're like, that totally goes against.
Like I didn't announce that I'm fixing the hand railing on my back deck, and it's still not happening.
I don't get
Anyway, Lindelof, am I right?
that. Gosh, you guys. Yes. I don't even know where we're at. Lindelof,
Oh well, we're at
Star
Ahsoka.
Wars.
I didn't get to really comment on that. So Ahsoka happening
Yeah,
late
yeah.
summer makes sense. D23 is happening September 8th to the 10th, so it makes sense that they're going to probably hold off Ahsoka until that weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my thought.
I'm definitely excited for Ahsoka. We got more stories about Ahsoka coming up here soon. But
Mhm.
we want to stay on the Star Wars movie track because Lindelof Star Wars movie is reportedly on its way. The finished script, or the script is finished. The talent has been attached, and according to Jeff Snyder, it is 100% set for December 2025. That is in he's been pushing this for a long time. Lindelof is involved. Lindelof is the next movie. Now he's saying Lindelof 100% for December 2025. This guy doesn't miss. If he does, it's rare. And he is pretty confident on this particular story. So Lacey, I'm going to kick it off to you on this one. What are your thoughts on Jeff Snyder saying this is the movie we're getting for Star Wars Celebration in 2025? The announcement, at least.
I mean, this is an instance that it's not a trade, so it has a little less of an impact than I think like coming out with a Deadline or a Hollywood Reporter or Variety coming out with this story. However, like you said, James, he hasn't been wrong so far, especially about this project. But at the same time, going back to what you were just saying, James, it hasn't been announced yet, so we
not
don't
officially
really
announced
know.
either.
This
What?
has not been announced.
That's
It
what I'm
has
saying.
not been
Yeah.
announced, so that we're all hoping as Star Wars fans and as people that talk about this all the time, we're assuming right now that this is going to be announced at Celebration,
And we're assuming right now that it's going to be December 2025. So when
correct.
if that
So it's
doesn't
on the
happen,
schedule.
you can't get mad at Lucasfilm for something Jeff Snyder said, right?
True, I guess.
Not on.
Whatever. So I
Did you get
I'm
a
hoping-
new job at the Presidio?
Do you want to be a publicist, James? Which the funniest thing is we've had straight up arguments with James before about publicists speak and about how he's like, I'm taking it exactly what it is at face value. And we're like, well, you can't with a publicist. Like they're there to cover the client. They're there to cover the person that they're probably not being 100% true. And James is like, I'm taking it literally. And here he is like,
I can read
spinning
between
this.
the lines, but they're not lying. They're not getting up there and lying to everybody.
I
Right?
think it is a little bit like it's like a white lie. Like they're like twisting it a little bit so that like there is an open room
Like
for
the
anyway.
PR statement about the Galactic Star Cruiser. Like, what if we want to focus on our voyages?
Sure,
Alright.
I guess. But anyway, so I think Jeff is being honest. I don't think he would, go out there and put 100% set if he wasn't 100% sure. That's a lot. Like he could even be like, oh, I'm 60%. You'd be like, okay, there's a little room there. To say 100% with John Roca, for them to talk about it and just
which was the podcast, John Roca's
Yes.
podcast.
Yep.
Hot mic. Yeah.
Hot mic,
Yeah.
but he's been consistent about this, and he was the one that broke the news about this writer's room with Dave Filoni and all this other stuff. So he clearly has a good source. He has someone that's giving him information. Now I'm gonna be a little hey Jeff, if you're listening to this, be careful because Marvel's hunting people on Reddit for leaking things now. So
I
maybe
heard
just
that,
be
yeah.
a little careful about where you're getting your information from. Now, obviously, you're not leaking scripts, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I hope this is 100% true. I hope we get it at Celebration. And I'm interested to see where this project goes because Damon is super talented. I think we do need a fresh perspective and eyes to the Star Wars universe. And I think he's going to give us something that we've never seen before. And I think as Star Wars fans, we're really itching for that. Like we want to be taken on a journey that we could have never expected to go on. Because right now, even though we love falling back on what we know and Easter eggs and fan service, I think we all also want to just be taken somewhere that we never could have expected. So I hope it's true.
I'm currently on Lindelof's IMDb right now because I want to see if he's got something coming out before this. Because if that comes out and it's terrible,
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Right?
because that happened with Taika too. Well, somewhat, yeah.
But
well, it
but this
hasn't happened
movie.
with Taika yet.
No, the
Yeah.
second Thor one didn't go well.
Oh, right. So that movie has come out, but if we find out that Taika's slowly been removed somehow or something, it's like
The curse
it's
of
that same age-old story. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's the same thing. We've seen it so many times. John,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts while I look at his IMDb?
Yeah, don't listen. Just look at his IMDb. That's cool, man. But no, Jeff Snyder broke the news about Lindelof literally a year ago, and people were like, "No way!" And then all of a sudden, all the trades pick up on it, and then
They did the same thing to you with Kenobi, by the way.
yeah.
Everyone was like, "You're such a liar."
I'm so happy I'm not in that like realm
Space
anymore.
anymore.
It's so stressful.
But I remember back in the day that people were like, "This is no way. This is true." And then
Yeah. But that, whatever. I mean, I had my misses too. So, I mean,
Mhm.
it happens. But Jeff Snyder's been a Hollywood reporter for a long time. He's been inside for a long time and he knows his stuff. But also, like, he even says on that podcast, he's like, even if I didn't have sources, he's like, if you just look at it logically, he's like, Feige's gone, Patty Jenkins gone. And he said Patty Jenkins is never going anywhere near Lucasfilm again. He said that they didn't like her or something like that.
Or
so I don't know what
DC.
that is. Yeah, so I don't know what that's about. But so that's gone. I think people at this point can stop thinking like, oh, they're just gonna wait on Rogue Squadron. I think it's gone.
I think Top Gun ruined that, honestly. And I know we've said that a bunch of times.
Well,
But as soon as that
also-
movie came out, I was like, how do you beat this perfection? You can't.
It just seems like they were struggling to even write the script and all that
Yeah.
from the very starting point. But and he says he's like, so then what are you left with? You have Taika Waititi, who he's still talking about. He's coming up with ideas, and you have Lindelof, who Snyder is saying has a finished script. He has talent attached to it. He has a director in Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. So which one do you think is coming out first? So he's like, you don't even like, I have information, but even just logically. And then he said like 100 million% that's the 2025 movie. So I believe it. I can't not believe it. He's been right all along about this Lindelof stuff. He was the first one to say it. And again, literally a year ago. So I think we are getting this Damon Lindelof, Obaid-Chinoy directed movie in December 2025, which is going to come quicker than we think. And then, to
Yeah,
your
they
point,
have to
James,
start
about
shooting next year if they're.
yeah, James, I was kidding about you not listening. You're on the IMDb page. He probably has to get that thing if they want to not do the rush thing, because I know Force Awakens they said even felt a little rushed, and that started filming spring 2014, came out December 2015. I think they want maybe 2 years, so if they start filming maybe at the end of this year, and then that gives them time for post-production after filming, plenty of time for reshoots and stuff like that. So he would need to whatever his project you think would be the Colin Trevorrow you lost your job project has to come out in the next 8 months. So
how wild is it if they're already filming stuff for this and we just don't know?
They could be, and let's not forget, Lindelof is the showrunner for Lost.
Think they would be, though.
J.J. Abrams created Lost. It wouldn't shock me. I've heard that J.J. and Kathy aren't as close or friendly, and neither is J.J. as close with the story group because he didn't rely on them as much as Rian Johnson did. But he turned out 2 successful Star Wars movies. He brought Star Wars back with The Force Awakens. He created Lost. Lindelof was the showrunner of Lost. Wouldn't shock me if there's a little bit of a connection there as to how he came into Star Wars. So yeah. So I'm buying it. I'm buying the 100% by Snyder. I agree, and I'll be completely shocked if we don't hear anything about this at Celebration. Completely floored.
So I looked up Lindelof and Charmin Hebdo-Chinoy, and both of them don't have anything upcoming other than just, it says on IMDb, upcoming untitled Star Wars project, but not as a director or a writer. So it looks like they've cleared their slate. They saw the curse and they're avoiding it.
Or they said, hey, if you want this, you need to keep your schedule clear, because they've been dealing with the scheduling with Rian Johnson and everybody else. They could be like, hey, yes, you want this, you have to keep your schedule open.
And I didn't mention that earlier when we were talking about Taika Waititi. John, you said, I think he's a little bit of like this or whatever. And I thought the direction you were going to go with, he's a little bit of a Spielbergy, I'll do a little bit of that. I'll do a little bit of this. I'll do a little bit of this. And he's got it, in hands in every cookie jar, because if you look at his list, he's got 7 upcoming things as a producer, 7 upcoming things as a writer. It's it's pretty crazy. I mean, he's still working on Akira, which is what? How long has that been a thing in a project? I think when he was announced for Akira, it was 2018 or 17 or something like that. That's what I'm saying. It's it's one of those things where it's The Rock is attached to Black Adam, and you're like, okay, whenever that happens, and it finally does. But it's it's just hard to say when you look at Taika's list that what of these things are actually going to happen, or is at some point or another he's going to get pulled away and say, you know what, I'm not as passionate about it as I was. I'm going to hand it off to this guy, get a little paycheck, and then it be what it is. But I think when it comes to this particular movie, and our story right here is that, do we think it's coming in 2025? I do. I have hopes that this is probably the one that they're going to announce at Celebration, and then at Celebration 2023, they're going to be able to say, okay, cool. Now we don't have to sneak around. We're still going to sneak around a little bit, but now we can be in the open that this movie is in active development. So when you see reports of where they're shooting, filming locations.
Well, the next Celebration is 2025. So they could literally announce it at this one and say, hey, next time we're here, we could talk about this more.
Oh yeah, trailer, that whole thing. But and don't forget, for people wondering about, well, they have 2025, 2027 on the schedule, 2026 open, maybe they do it there. Avatar 4, 2026. Cameron's not going to give up his December slot. Disney's not going to take his slot away. Top 3 movies of all time. Star Wars is not going head to head with Cameron, and Star Wars is likely never going back to May releases. So I don't think 2026 is Star Wars. So where does Taika fit in if Sean Levy is the 2027 slot? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of what this Lindelof story could even be, Jon Favreau, while doing press for Mandalorian, is saying that there's all sorts of talks about things here and there and everywhere, including after the rise of Skywalker. He says it's definitely in there. He compares it to sort of like an archaeological dig. It's like sometimes you know a little bit about this and this, but you don't always get the full picture. And then eventually things come out and you get the full picture. It's pretty cool. But as he is stating right now, he's sort of saying, yeah, they're talking about stuff after the rise of Skywalker. And this is again kind of what I'm saying is like, I know things are being developed for this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because they're talking about it, this proves that Lindelof's movie or anything like that is going to be set after this, or anyone's story, or that they're going to be doing this time frame anytime soon. John, do you have any thoughts on what the other John is saying about projects that are set after the rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, I find this to be very interesting because it shows how more involved Favreau is in this and with Lucasfilm than just his, MandoVerse, which I like. I don't like the word verse, but I like that better than Mando Plus because that sounds like its own like streaming series or service.
And if it's not him, his best friend Dave Filoni is. So
is
sharing privately
exactly
among friends.
But we've been saying this for a long time, and we're not the only ones about Grogu doing stuff after Episode 9. Favreau has hinted at the fact that it's a vast galaxy. There's easily ways to explain what people were doing during these other events. And he's mentioning things like we need to explore what happens after this major event in the galaxy's history, which happened in a very small period of time, which is fair, a year or so in between TFA and the Rise of Skywalker. But some of the language he used sounded like we language and not they. So it sounds to me like he is way more involved beyond The Mandalorian and those series, because he has his window that he talks about that he loves that he has to play with between 6 and 7. And it is a nice little clean spot where he can tell his stories for the most part. There is some overlap. But when he's saying there's definitely a conversation going on, and then he says, like,
we kind of connect the dots. He says a lot of we. He says, so I think that there are markers that we have. It's almost like studying ancient history, where you kind of find a few things that happen, but there's a lot of murkiness in between, and we just don't have archaeological evidence in the real world to know exactly what happened. So we kind of connect the dots.
Exactly. And that's the stuff that I'm like, it sounds like he's involved here. And I'm not about to say like Jon Favreau is going to take over as head of creative for Lucasfilm. I don't think Filoni is in a position to do that either, but that'd be really cool. But it certainly sounds like they're asking him for input on storytelling stuff that go beyond the shows he's making, because his show takes place 9 years after the Battle of Yavin. Sequel trilogy is 30 years after, and then we're talking about stuff after that. So they're asking, he's being involved in discussions about things that take place more than 2 decades after his stories. Man, this sounds so nerdy.
You know what's interesting though? Like that context of the word we, because you guys are absolutely right the way you're phrasing that, but that's not how I took it when that statement was said. So I was taking that when every time he said we, I thought he was saying like we as fans, actually. So I think that there are certain markers that we have as fans, like we know this happened, the original trilogy happened, and the sequel trilogy happened. We have those markers as fans. And it's sort of like ancient history, because Lucasfilm knows what's going on, but we don't get all the pieces. We only get like a little bit of Mandalorian or a little bit of like this book that comes out. It's just like the little pieces of the evidence of what they could be working on as a whole. So we as fans sort of connect the dots.
He wasn't talking about as fans, though. He's saying that he was talking about before revealing that Lucasfilm has plans for exploring future stories and how his shows he's working on will encompass a larger period of time. To me, that clearly states that it's him talking about, maybe him and his writing team talking about Mando time period, James, to your defense, of not past sequel stuff. However, I don't think he's looking at this as being a fan. He's saying, as storytellers, we have few markers here.
He said, yeah, there's a conversation going on. Like, he's pointing to a conversation, like them talking about it.
But I can see why you'd think that, James, but I didn't take it that way at all. Yeah.
I'm just saying, when you say there's a conversation going on, like, I know what they're talking about. but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm included. That's how
how
I read it. But I mean, I don't disagree with you that he probably would be included, but I read that whole thing and I go, yeah, all of that makes sense. Obviously, what he's just kind of saying here is, of course, Lucasfilm is developing other things. They're developing over here. They're developing over here, but I'm focused on my world. And I sometimes get bits and pieces of the markers just as a fan. I understand kind of what's going on in the larger galaxy, but where I work in this area. Is kind of how I was taking.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't take it that way. Interesting.
But I mean, I don't know. You bring up that really good point, though, is like the context of the word "we." I feel like could absolutely mean what you're saying as well, and I hope you see that it could also mean how I took it. But interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
So should I give my thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Lacey, what do you have? That was gonna.
So first of all, the thing that stuck out to me about this, outside the whole like what he's doing and we stuff and whatever, is just the fact that he brings up again that the sequel trilogy was like a year. It's so crazy to me that we got such a gigantic saga series like the sequel trilogy, and it only takes place over like a year. Like that really boggles my mind that we didn't get at least a couple years in between each movie to kind of develop that story a little bit. And I just thought of that really quickly. I was like, I wish it was longer. I wish there was more chunk of time there.
I've thought about that so much, and I think that's a move on Rian Johnson saying that he's picking up right after Force Awakens. Like he didn't have to do that, but the fact that movie is like one day and then the very next day after that, that means 2 movies only span like a week, or whatever. Yeah. At best.
It's crazy to me because, you look at A New Hope and those characters progress so much over those years because they're going from, when we first meet them to then at the end of Return of the Jedi where they're like, older, wiser, been through all these situations. And then you're like, and Favreau's reminding me that like, oh yeah, it was only like a day, right? And you're like, oh my God, it wasn't just like a day. But anyway, it makes me excited that there's conversations happening outside of what Jon's doing. And I think we've heard rumblings of this before. I know Jon Kasdan has said at Celebrations, the last Celebration, that he's had conversations with Jon about bringing solo characters back. Like specifically when it comes to The Mandalorian, he likes what Jon's doing. This is Jon Kasdan said this. He likes what Jon Favreau's doing, and he's had those conversations. So already we're branching outside of what the space that Jon is working in, as in Jon Favreau. I know I've mentioned like 6 Johns technically, but no, Jon Kasdan is talking about what Jon Favreau is working on and in expanding his knowledge into these characters. And then you have someone like Dave Filoni who's coming in, who's saying, hey, did you know about this? Did you learn about this? Did you know about this character? How about this? The ramifications of this decision. And I think it's really expanded Jon Favreau's view of Star Wars outside of what he originally probably thought was what he liked, which we all know is Boba Fett and like the original trilogy. I think Dave Filoni's really opened his mind to all these other possibilities, and that's what you're seeing seep into The Mandalorian with all these Rebels characters and Clone Wars references and all this other stuff. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if he did branch out to the sequel trilogy because they have to tell stories there. They kind of left in a spot that it's like ripe for the picking with new stories. And if they're going to want to find someone to successfully tell a good story in the Star Wars universe right now, it's kind of either Tony Gilroy or Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Like those are the people that they're going to go to. Tony is busy with Andor. Now, obviously Jon Favreau is busy with Mandalorian, but he also has more writers and more kind of team behind him, I think, than Tony Gilroy does.
And Tony seems like the type of person that would be like, "Oh, Andor's done. I'm never doing Star Wars again."
I think he's beyond done. He's
already said it.
Diego Luna said, "I can't wait to be finished."
Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think Jon, on the other hand, is someone that's like he'll wrap up more Mandalorian, and there's a good chance that he could move on and say, "I've done my thing. That's great. I got to be a big part of Star Wars." But I think he's obsessed with it. A little bit more interested in it. Yeah, that he could, and it makes sense that he would move forward, even beyond these characters. He could move forward in the story because he would be able to continue to work with maybe some of those characters, like
Bob Iger writes him a $750 million check and say, "Be my creative head for the next decade." I'm sure Favreau would be like,
"I'm sure those conversations are happening because
The Office is right down the road."
Yeah, you can't look at James Gunn and not think that Marvel/Disney is looking at that going, all right, what's next? What's our next step here?
You see a couple food trucks parked in the back lot.
I absolutely hear that, but that still kind of surprises me from from a standpoint of like Jon Favreau thinking I could do Star Wars for the rest of my life, or it's like the Drew Carey sort of like, do you go the Price is Right?
It's James
like,
Cameron with
if
Avatar.
I do that, that's it. Yeah, James. Well, yeah, but James Cameron is self-inflicting that. He's not.
But this case would also be kind of self-inflicting that, because I think Jon Favreau really loves it.
He'd be taking the job. Yeah, he'd be taking the job.
But also, and I think one thing that's 100% lock, going forward is Grogu, and he's going to absolutely appear in post Episode 9 stuff. And who created Grogu? Jon Favreau. Yeah. So he definitely is. I think he's going to have some level of involvement, because he probably feels this sort of parental responsibility over Grogu, so, and that's a big deal, a big cog in this whole thing.
Yep. Well, one more quick thing, because we could talk all day about that stuff, but one more quick thing before we get out of the Resistance report is Lars Mikkelsen once again denies that he's being cast for Thrawn as Ahsoka. I was going to bounce back at you guys what you think. Lacey, any thoughts on this happening? You think he's Thrawn?
I think he's lying. And here's why. One, Liam Neeson kind of Liam Neeson opened up that door of no. Yes. So I think that is happening. I think also we know from the lovely Rosario Dawson that she put up a story that he was Thrawn. So I think there's a little bit of sure, she could have been excited, or maybe she knows something and was like, oops, my bad. So she's done that so far with Anakin. I don't know. I think he's lying, not to be malicious or mean. I think he's just lying because he can't say anything.
Yeah. What about you, John? What do you think?
I don't think he's playing Thrawn. And not to discredit that theory or anything, because it checks and it's happened. I think he does. I don't think he looks like Thrawn should look. So I think he's telling the truth. I honestly do.
Mm-hmm.
I am actually with John too. Is I feel like this story of people saying similar to like the Taylor Gray thing, or the Ashley Eckstein thing, we want so and so to be the person because you were the voice of the person. It's like, I just don't think the Filonis and the Favreaus and stuff, that maybe if it works out, that's fine. But Katie Sackhoff or something, it's fine. But I just don't. I think that Lars is probably telling the truth, and it's like, it would be cool, but I've not been approached, and it's probably not happening, and that makes sense to me. And I don't put any craziness on that. Right. Lacey, I am going to pass it back to you, as we have now officially wrapped the Resistance report, and let's head into our next section.
Yep, guys, it's time for the Patreon pod race. All right, guys. Here is the Patreon pod race. So there are lots of ways you can support us. You can like this video, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We're growing there. We really appreciate it. We had to start a whole new channel. So all your support means so much. You can follow us on all the different audio platforms, from Spotify podcasts to Apple Podcasts, who named us one of the top featured Mandalorian podcasts on their front page because of you guys, because you said stuff online, you listen to our shows, and you leave reviews, and it means so much. So if you haven't done so already, please leave a review for us. Let us know how we're doing. It means so much. And share the show, of course. You can also follow us on all the social channels at TRB Podcasts, including TikTok now, which is super fun. But if you want more than that, if you want to be a part of the Resistance, support the show even more, you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Starting at just $5 a month, that's it. You get to be a part of the page, a part of the community there, and take part in the show. So we have Will of the Force questions. We have a Discord server. We do live streams, monthly calls, stuff like that. As you go up in the ranks, you get more perks. So this is one of our perks. It's called the Patreon pod race, where we ask a question to our generals or spice runners, and they give us their answer, and we talk about it. So before we do that, I do want to thank those people. So thank you to our generals: Carmelo, John Reese, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Mori, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Paul Sullivan, Aaron Ellington, Diana, Ivar, and Micah Harrison. Welcome back, Micah. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much. And to our Spice Runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gellner, Ryan Wara, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry. Thank you guys so much as well. So this week, oh my God, there's so much to say. This week, we have Brian Smith, one of our generals. Thank you, Brian. We're so pumped to have you back. And his question was, what is your favorite memory or experience seeing a Star Wars movie in theaters and why? Brian, take it away.
Greetings, Resistance fighters. When I'm not out on a witch hunt with my faithful witch hunting dog right here, my beautiful Catahoula, I love to enjoy a movie at the theater where movies are meant to be seen. So, what better movie to enjoy than a Star Wars premiere on the big screen? And my favorite that I've ever been to was Star Wars Episode 1. That's right. That's right. It was the first Star Wars premiere that I got to go to with my wife, although at the time we were just dating. The theater that we saw it, where we saw it, is still standing to this day. Okay, the Palace 20 at Elmwood, which is an area that's home to 3 sound studios as well. So that's my pick, and I'm sticking to it.
Well done, Brian. Always keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
Great answer. John, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, episode 1, great memories for me. I camped out with my friends to get tickets. We went to go see a lot of people in costumes. It's burned in my brain as though it was last week. So I'm with you. A great Star Wars experience in the theater. Loved it. It was the return of Star Wars, return of George Lucas. Great answer, Brian. And want to know more about that pup. So let me know on Discord, buddy. Thanks, pal.
James?
Yeah, Brian, I think this is probably the perfect example, probably for most people too, honestly. I'm actually sort of left out of that. For some reason, I don't really remember my experience with Phantom Menace. I obviously saw it in a theater. I obviously saw Attack of the Clones in a theater, but the only one I remember going to see is Revenge of the Sith. So in a way, I'm kind of envious of what you got there, Brian. I wish I did have that big screen memory of going to see episode 1 for the first time in the theater. So thanks for submitting the question or the answer to our question. And thanks for being a patron, of course.
Great answer, Brian. Really appreciate it. I myself remember going to see episode 1. It was amazing. There was a lot of promotions from Taco Bell and everything else on TV, and you just saw the toys and everything. And it was just this hype of Star Wars is back. And I'd gotten into Star Wars in 2nd grade, so this was ways after that. I think it was like 5th or 6th grade that I saw episode 1. But yeah, it was just really awesome. Although I do like to tell everybody, which is totally true, I left the movie asking my dad where Luke Skywalker was because I didn't fully understand the whole timeline thing. But I still loved the pod racing. I loved Padme. It was just really, really fun. But yeah, thank you for your answer. And now we're going to head to John for Ask the Resistance.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
That's right, folks. It's time for Ask the Resistance. You submit questions to us via Twitter using the hashtag #AskTheResistance, and we do our best to discuss them on the show and hopefully give you an answer that you enjoy. But let us know what you think, of course, after you listen or watch. We only have time for one question today, so we're going to save the other questions. We'll get to them next time around. So we're each going to give a quick answer on this one. This comes from Ben Potter. I believe that's Harry's dad at Potter 100. And he said, if Star Wars announced a new trilogy at Celebration, where in the galaxy, he means geographically, and when in the timeline would you like it to take place? I'll just start real quick. I don't go all over the galaxy, bounce around. We've seen that happen a lot. So that's cool with me. In terms of timeline, I love the idea of the clean canvas. So I want to go past what we know so that there's no wedging continuity issues or anything. Let's see that open palette, paint a picture, tell us a new story after episode 9. Lacey?
I'm going to say same time period. I want something after Rise of Skywalker, fresh new place to explore that isn't tied to anything that we know so far. However, I definitely kind of want to explore the inner core, but I want to see new planets. I don't want it to, take place on Coruscant the whole time. I'd like to see other things going on, but maybe glimpses of things that we know. The way that they do it so well right now.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm exactly with Lacey on the inner core thing. Like, I think I'm kind of getting almost slowly burnt out on the outer core of like
no one lives
randomized
here.
planet
No
with
one
nothing,
knows anything.
nor crazy sand planet where nobody lives. But I do think that I would explore a different area, which is that I don't want to say that it's Old Republic, but I say go back real far. Give me the proto blades. Give me the Sith Jedi War or something crazy that's like, hey, you know what? Let's take a break from like what you kind of not recognize as Star Wars, because this is still Star Wars, but it's like, let's do something crazy over here that's like Hobbitish versus Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? It's like that's probably not a great comparison.
No, it's not.
You know what I mean? It's like it's back here, and it's a long time before or something. So I would like to explore that versus like staying in the pocket.
And now, James, where can people find you on social media?
Oh yeah, because we got to get out of here. So I am gonna say at Meyer Trunks on Twitter and Instagram, and every week on Wednesdays with the Bad Batch.
Home stretch, buddy. Home stretch. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran, on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran. And then this Wednesday, I'll be doing the Mando Minute, as well as a live reaction exclusively on Patreon of the latest chapter 20 of The Mandalorian.
And you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We did Scream recently, and we're doing the Bourne Identity. Should be out tomorrow. And join us this Thursday, because I can't make it Wednesday. So we're doing it Thursday. The Mando Fan Show will be live, same time, 8:30 East, as we're going to talk about the halfway point. I can't believe it. The halfway point of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, Chapter 20, Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. East here on the channel. And get your next number in the Mando code. But we hope everyone is off to a wonderful spring. Hopefully it warms up and everyone starts feeling good, because it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan. Enjoy your weeks, and we'll see you Thursday night on the Mando Fan Show right here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.